My final thoughts on Georgia. What can I say about Georgia? Georgia is unique. I've been surprised by just how much this place feels like Iran did. It feels a bit like Turkey. It also feels a lot like Russia, but at the same time, it feels like none of those places. I've also noticed that Georgians are incredibly patriotic. And you can't help but feel that patriotism is a survival instinct. Having spent the last 300 years with Russia trying to erase their national identity, the Georgian flag isn't as much about being proud to be Georgian. It feels as though it's more of a declaration that we are not Russian and we are free. Throughout Georgia, European Union flags are ubiquitous and they're flown alongside the Georgian flag everywhere. Yet Georgia is not a member of the EU. The flags are a statement, not just that they see themselves culturally aligned with Europe, but that they believe in the European ideals of liberalism, democracy, and government accountability. Georgians are looking towards the EU not just because of the economic benefits that membership brings, but they want their government to rise to the standard that is required for EU membership because they want to live in a Western democracy and they're prepared to force their government into that. Now, when the Soviet Union collapsed, Georgia gained independence, but immediately lost huge industries that employed most of the population. This led to the same extreme poverty and unemployment that cursed most of the former Soviet countries in the 1990s. And unlike places like Russia, Georgia had no natural resources to pull themselves out of that hole quickly. It has relied heavily on trade with Russia, especially in the form of tourism, to keep its economy alive. But there's also understandable unease within Georgia about what any kind of dependence on Russia of any form could lead to. Now, remember, the last time Georgia made overt moves to sever its ties with Russia and reach out towards NATO, Putin invaded. 20% of the country is still occupied by Russian forces. Georgia desperately needs foreign investment, and for that to happen, they need to maintain their commitment to democracy and the rule of law. Now, the Georgian people understand the path they need to tread. They understand what is at stake, and they have demonstrated consistently their desire to fight for that, most recently in the manner in which they united to force the government to back down over a controversial foreign agent law, which many feared would be used to clamp down on opposition. Now, the law in itself wasn't actually that draconian, but the people of Georgia recognised it as a step back and a step back towards Russia. Now, the question that remains unanswered is, how much will Vladimir Putin use his power to extinguish the will of the Georgian people? And a lot of that depends on the outcome of his war with Ukraine. If Putin suffers a substantial defeat in Ukraine, he will be in no position to exert meaningful pressure in Georgia. If Putin succeeds, however, if his barbaric venture results in Russia gaining territory and his power consolidated, he will feel emboldened to squeeze his southern neighbour once again, safe in the knowledge that the West is incapable of stopping him. This is one reason why Georgians have stood so strongly with Ukraine throughout this war. There are even Georgian legions fighting in Ukraine. Not only do they have a shared history of Russian aggression, they have a shared fate if Putin prevails. Georgia's future is precarious, but it's also optimistic. The West needs to continue to help Georgia because nothing about its fate is certain, except for the fact that the Georgian people, they will continue to fight for Georgian freedom and independence because it's what they've done for all of Georgia's history.
We come here with big European flags to tell them that we are Georgians and we need Europe, and we believe that Georgian place is in Europe.
Now, whether Georgia finds a path to becoming a stable European democracy or whether it slides back into some kind of Russian-controlled kleptocracy, it doesn't actually have much bearing on the geopolitical landscape of the world, but it could serve as a blueprint for other nations aspiring to make that progression or serve as a cautionary tale on what not to do. I'm hopeful in my heart that Georgia will serve as a positive tale in the history books, a symbol of how the struggle eventually prevails. But again, nothing is certain. I hope to return to Georgia at some point, maybe in say 10 years' time, and see a nation that has matured. But by all likelihood, maybe in 10 years' time, they won't even let me in the country. So look, it's been an amazing trip, and thank you so much for being part of it that whole way. I guess this story still hasn't been finished yet, though.